Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the program on Salam Media, Al Ansar, and One Nation FM out in Polokwane, as well as on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Salam Media. And welcome to our viewers as well out on the YouTube platform, Salam Media on YouTube. You can get it all there if you miss it on the radio waves. Now, as you know, this time of the morning is reserved as a tribute to Muslim broadcasters, journalists, print media, TV, wherever they may have been serving for years on end, inspired by the work, life, and times of none other than Ibrahim Kangat, rahmatullah alayh. And today, our Muslim broadcaster of choice is none other than Faizal Dawjee, a veteran of the field, has been at it for many, 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 many years. And we welcome him to the program. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for having me, Azhar.
It's wonderful speaking to you, Agar Faisal, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to remind you of something, and I hope you do remember it. I'm not sure. But there's a reason why I'm sitting here in the media world, and it's largely to do with a meeting outside a coffee shop that we had way back. I think it was in the year 2000 or 2001 in Fordsburg. And you encouraged me to get into journalism, speaking, with my dad. I don't know if you remember that.
Absolutely, very, very clearly.
I also remember you told me that journalists earn about 5,000 rands a month, so you got to be prepared to live with that
At
as
that time,
well.
5,000 rand was a lot.
Yeah, and it seems like it's going back to those situations, unfortunately, where if you're earning 5,000 rands under these economic situations, you
Yeah.
could be one of the fortunate ones out there. Now, Uncle Faisal, the life and times of your media career, where did it all begin and how did you get involved in it?
Azhar, it's a long story. Goes back to 1985. I was in Saudi Arabia studying Arabic course, and around about June, July was our holiday, and so I decided I needed to see some parts of the world that I haven't. So I packed a rucksack, grabbed a camera, and I flew to Pakistan. I landed in Rawalpindi and made my way to Peshawar. So at that time, I decided, I said, let me go and see what's happening in Afghanistan. So in Peshawar, I then visited many of the refugee camps, the Afghan refugees who were coming in from across the border. And then I made contact with one of the major Mujahideen groups. And they decided after some time to take me into Afghanistan. And so I joined them and we crossed into an area called Paktiar, which is a province probably on the southeast of Afghanistan. And from there, we made our way into the major camp of the Mujahideen, and I spent about probably a month with them. And so that, in a sense, was the beginning of my, I wouldn't say career, but my interest in journalism. I started writing, taking photographs, sending it back home. Remember, this was the days where we didn't have mobile technology. There was no cell phones or computers. Well, I didn't have a computer. I had a film camera, and I had to write the articles and fax it. So
Yes.
when I was in Afghanistan, I didn't have any of those facilities. So only when I got back to Pakistan, back to my hotel in Peshawar, I was able to fax the story back to Al-Qalam in Durban. So that was the first foray into journalism. And then progressively, my career took a different course. In August 86, I was called by the then editor of Al Kalam, Fuad Hendricks, who said, listen, we want you to come back and take over the editorship of Al Kalam. So I did so, and you do recall, I hope you recall, you were probably very young then, 86, 87, 88 was at the height of the onslaught of the apartheid state against the political opposition in South Africa. I was editor for 3 years, and then I at that time, around about 92, the war in Bosnia broke out. But in between, I had already gone to Iran and Iraq to cover the first Gulf War. So I went via Turkey. From Istanbul, I crossed right into Iraq via Mosul. I went to Mosul, saw the refugees, saw the conditions they were in. This was in 1990. And so coming back, 1992, I went into Bosnia. And in 92, I probably made about 4 trips into Bosnia. And then in 93, I spent the whole year in Sarajevo. That was the time of the siege of Sarajevo. And I was writing for various newspapers then, writing for Al Kalam, writing for a Arabic newspaper based in London. Obviously, they used to translate my stories. And I had 1 or 2 articles in our local Sunday Times also. So I suppose that was the sort of the height of my journalism career. Just experiencing and writing and also being interviewed. I was interviewed on various radio stations. I remember 702, and at that time SABC TV early morning, and did various interviews on radio stations in Europe. I remember one episode, I landed in Paris in 93, and a friend of mine said, listen, I need you to do an interview on a French community radio station. And I said, okay, fine, let's do it. So it started off at 10 o'clock at night, and the interview finished off at 6 o'clock in the morning. That was the interest from the community about what was happening in Bosnia.
Look, we've got just a couple of minutes to
Sure.
put things into
perspective.
We don't have a Olympics tomorrow. But nonetheless, you've been through some of the most horrific, conflicts in the last 30 years. You've seen a lot. What has it done to you as a human being, having to witness these kinds of human tragedies?
So I suppose essentially one, goes out looking for the truth. And I suppose that's the essential quality of any journalist. If you want to get into this business, that should be your ultimate goal. You're looking for truth. And it comes in various shades, so my experience in Afghanistan was totally different from my experience in Bosnia. What it did do to me, my experience in Bosnia, is as a witness and as a journalist, is to be thankful that what I witnessed there, I did not experience in our own country. When the transformation and transition was taking place, I am always grateful about what we experienced in that period of our transition. Because war is something I hope that we never experience as journalists, as ordinary people. For me, it was terrifying. For me, it was always living on the edge. I had the opportunity of leaving whenever I could Sarajevo, because journalists had special privileges to get onto a plane, and within 2 hours I was either in Frankfurt or Geneva or anywhere else. But it showed me that there are no limits to human depravity, how depraved people can be, to what extent people.
And finally, Uncle Faisal, I want to just contextualize it. When you look at South Africans today, South African Muslims from across the board, and the issues that we have, and you weigh up our arguments and bickering against the reality that other people have faced in these situations, how do you compare the two, or look at our issues and grievances as compared to what you've seen?
Well, Afghanistan, Bosnia, Iran, Iraq, these were full-scale conflicts. You had external parties involved. People were living day to day. It was a question of survival. I think our issues were much more political, much more contained within that framework. Obviously, we came to a point where there had to be negotiations. And we didn't have wide-scale conflict as such. We didn't have bombings and shootings and assassinations and sniper fire and all of that. And we should be grateful for that. We should be grateful for people taking on the negotiations, irrespective of how flawed it might be. Ours was a situation where we needed leaders to sit down and talk. What happened in Bosnia was that before they got to that position, there was just destruction and killing. And it called for intervention by the international community. Again, whether that was flawed or not, at a certain point it did bring about a semblance of peace. So in the end, it's about people talking to one another, because you can't talk to people that you like. You have to talk to people that you're in conflict with. So that is the lesson that I learned from this.
Absolutely, and I think it's an important lesson. Even if we bring it to our local issues and our community issues that we are facing right now, you've got to eventually sit and talk to people, even if you don't like them. But that's the only way we'll get to some kind of a solution. We'd like to thank you for your contribution to world media, the information, the sacrifices you made. I know going into war and conflict zones is a journalism unlike any other, and to have been through in the last 30 odd years, what you've seen and what you've experienced must have been something traumatic for yourself, and the sacrifices only you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know. Jazakallah khairan for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah for having me. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, that brings us to the end of today's program, and it's already on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Salam Media. And this particular interview is also available on the Salam Media YouTube channel. From me, Azhar Vadi, fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.